Hello Podcats, Geoff Gascoigne here. Today I'm going to be talking to an old friend of mine, Pete Churchill, a great educator, great piano player and singer, composer, arranger, a mainstay of the British jazz scene for many, many years. We used to work together in the 90s. I haven't seen him for a while, so I'm looking forward to catching up with him and seeing what he has to say. So here we go.
The Quartet Jazz Standards podcast is brought to you by the Quartet app for iOS, taking your jazz play-along to another level.
It's Pete Churchill. Hello, mate.
Hello, Geoff.
How are you today?
I'm very well. Yeah, very, very well. It's lovely to be here.
Good. Can we start by talking about how you got started in jazz? What's your background? Because I know we've known each other a long time.
God, haven't we?
But I don't think I know much about your history.
Oh, it's so traumatic. No, it's not traumatic.
We met in the 90s, didn't we? We started off playing together in the 90s.
Yeah, that's right. And sort of crossed paths in various bands. And we did a lovely little album together, didn't we?
We did, a Christmas album.
Yeah, a Christmas album, which I think was like the 12 Keys of Christmas.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes. The Winter Wonderland, yeah.
Yeah, Adam Glasser, Andy Panay,
Yeah.
How did it all begin? Is that what you want to know?
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, my parents were both classical musicians. Quite sort of highbrow, I guess. In London in the 50s and 60s, my dad was organist and choir director at St Martin's in the Fields.
Really?
And my mum was sub-organist and also a recital organist and concert pianist. He founded that orchestra, the Academy of St Martin's in the Fields.
Wow.
And he was the original. He was a Baroque specialist and improviser, Baroque improviser. He was one of those people who could improvise fugues and do all that stuff. We left the UK and emigrated to Canada when I was 6. Dad got offered a job to start a music department in Ottawa.
Really?
And so the whole family travelled on a big boat from Southampton to Montreal docks.
Wow.
And the idea of leaving what you knew and going somewhere that you don't know happened quite young for me. And I went to a Canadian school for a couple of years before, in their wisdom, they sent us all back to a school in the UK, but remained in Canada. I think my parents probably thought parenting was a bit of an ordeal. My dad used to say, in hindsight, when I questioned him about the wisdom of sending your 8-year-old child off to boarding school, he said, well, these people are professionals. We're all amateurs. You know,
wow, yeah.
I agree, parenting, we're all amateurs, you know.
I've spoke to a few different people about this, parents and the relationship between musician parents and their kids.
Yeah.
And we both obviously have kids that are musicians. You know?
Yes,
so
that's right.
we have different experiences of this.
I was away at school and I was taking piano lessons and cello lessons. There were 3 kids. They made us all learn 2 instruments on the understanding, I gathered, that when we got into rebellious mode, they could negotiate, well, you can give up one of them. I gave up the cello. You know, I had a moment at the school where I gave up all music. And it was quite dramatic. I decided I didn't want to play the cello in the school orchestra in assembly. One morning, I just thought, I can't do this anymore. This is horrendous. And when I got into trouble for it, I thought, well, in for a penny. And I said, and actually, I'm not going to do piano either, or be in the school orchestra, or the school choir, or do music O-level.
Yeah.
And so, I was maybe 13,
right,
and all music stopped. I didn't do music at school. And my dad started to send me cassette tapes of jazz pianists and things. Right. Okay. And I started to listen to, Jelly Roll Morton and Louis Armstrong Hot 5 recordings, and then I got into a bit of Errol, Garner and all that.
The music of rebellion, I guess, for a child.
Well, and it was interesting. My dad was a jazz fan, I mean, he could always play standards with good harmony in all keys. Yeah. I thought, you're meant to play every tune in every key, or else you'll never get a gig. There's things. Nobody told me that's not the case. So from quite early on, I was playing and trying to teach myself and to read chord symbols, but I never did classical study again.
Well, for a child, it can be very cold, can't it?
I wasn't built for the exam system the way I'm wired. My last piano teacher was a school organist who happened to be called Mr. Pipes. And you're meant to take them seriously, right? It's like, it's not his fault, but he obviously thought I should learn the Pathétique, and after 6 months on the first 3 pages, I'd lost the will to live,
Yeah.
But I did learn a lot of pop songs, mostly to stay in with some kind of social group, so I learnt a lot of Elton John. I learnt more about triads from Elton John songs, and I never learnt doing Bach chorales.
Yeah.
So I kept in touch with music until I left school at 16 and went to Canada, because that's where my parents were, and went to university to do art history.
Interesting.
And almost got an art history degree. But I was playing piano bars. I'm really grateful that I did basically a liberal arts degree.
Yeah.
The reason I changed to music, bearing in mind I didn't really read or write music at the time, was because I was asked to write a musical at university. And I wrote 10 songs for the University Theatre Company, and then they said, you've got a band, and it's a rhythm section and 4 front line. And I went, oh.
So you started composing music quite early on then?
Songwriting, tunes. I was maybe 19. 18, 19. I'd written some things at school, some songs at school, which I didn't play to anybody. And I played a lot of boogie-woogie things and kind of, some, things that you do. When you...
I was exactly the same.
Yeah, I was just like, whatever.
Scott Joplin.
Yeah, and all that kind of thing. But I realised what I was doing. I was trying to write the Great American Songbook. Yeah. Trying to figure out how these things work, these cadences worked, and how learning about song form. And by this time I was learning a few standards and Cole Porter tunes, and so I was trying to write similar things. And I knew some Broadway things, and my dad had some Sinatra and Basie big band albums, and I had all that going on in my head. And so I wrote these songs and then enrolled in a music course, Fundamentals of Music, to try and learn about notation. And it must have been a crash course, because within 6 months I'd written a kind of pad for the show, I think it's interesting, if you do music and then come to theory after you've been doing it for a long time, it's very different. It's like basically you're learning a vocabulary to describe sounds that are already in your head. Interesting,
yeah, because I was the other way around. I started reading from a very young age.
Right, yeah.
So I took it for granted.
Yes.
And so I came to jazz. It's not about me, but I'll just say this
anyway.
No.
It's really
started to transcribe and write it down. Right, and I would always write stuff down.
Yeah, and I'm married to Nikki Isles, and she came through the classical route.
Yeah.
And played a lot of transcription, she tells me, like Bill Evans, with the record, which is most important. I learnt to read by having to write music down. Yeah, but I didn't read through the graded exams or anything. So I had no visual. I still have a very weird visual relationship with music. Right. I think efficient sight readers bypass the ear, really. They have a visual stimulus and a muscular response.
Sure.
Whereas I can only play something if I can hear it. So I'm basically sight singing in my head and trying to play what I hear. Yeah. Which is not very efficient, as you can imagine. Yeah. It took me 7 years to get my degree, because I had to start again after art. I was in my early 20s and I was still scrabbling around trying to figure out, how music works. So I did 4 years of harmony and counterpoint, more than I needed to. And so got really into, because my dad was teaching there, I got the old school Royal College of Music, where he used to teach kind of boot camp harmony counterpoint instruction, invertible counterpoint, fugal expositions, 5-part chorales. I had to do settings of the mass. But I was kind of getting into jazz, and there was a time when I thought I need to decide what I do after my degree, And my parents pointed out that there was a summer course in Dartington in Devon with Richard Rodney Bennett writing film music. So I sent off my scores, because by now I'd done some incidental music to some Shakespeare plays and things. I got accepted. There were 8 composers. One of the 8 composers was Scott Stroman.
Oh, okay.
Who was, as we know, is been at the Guildhall, quite influential teacher there. Yeah. And he told me about the Guildhall course and the 1-year postgrad course, which was in its infancy. This was 1984. Yeah. And I think he'd only just started to teach there.
Yeah, this is the birth of jazz education, isn't it?
In the UK, after the Leeds undergrad in light music, the only place you could go was... Yeah. I thought, I'm going to have a go at this. And I sent off a portfolio of things, from Canada, and I didn't get on. And
funny you should say that, because I applied for the Guildhall. I didn't get in either.
Yeah. In those days, I wanted to be not a piano player. I wanted to be a composer-arranger. And the Guildhall, I don't know if it's still that, you can be a first study composer-arranger. Yeah. You could then on the postgrad diploma.
Yeah. But not getting into a course like that also teaches you a lot about your own self-discipline, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I remember that's what happened to me. It forced me to do lots of things that I wouldn't have done.
Yeah. And so I sat down and I remember thinking, when I had to write fugues and things, I'd used to spend all weekend just listening to Bach and then try and write something similar.
Right.
Trying to find, even though there was a kind of probably a way that you could teach it with, by rules and regulations. For me, that I knew there was a sense in the sound, and if I could just have that in my ear, the way things worked, and so I thought, right, I'm going to do nothing for a week except listen to Sammy Nestico charts, and Count Basie and whoever, other things, and then I'll write something similar. So I did, and I got on, and I do remember at my audition I had to play piano as well, and there was, in those days, Lionel Grigson was teaching. Lionel wanted me to go on as a piano player. Why do you want to be a composer, arranger? You should be a piano player. I went, well, I like writing. Oh, well, if you play piano, you can write. And I'm thinking, no, I don't think that's true. Just because you can play the piano doesn't mean you can orchestrate and everything. So I went as a composer, arranger, and it was a good year.
Yeah.
I was there with Cleveland, Watkins, and a lot of John Miles, a fantastic saxophone player, was there. He was a good mate.
I had a band with John Miles, actually, back in the 90s,
so it was like, it was a good place for me. And then after I'd graduated with my PG dip in jazz, it was quite hard because I'd done a lot of gigs in Canada before I left. A lot of people were there and they'd done an undergrad at a university or they'd done the Leeds course. And they had much more jazz than I had. I was improvising, but I didn't have any theory about jazz. I didn't know anything about modes. I sort of remembered them from studying polyphony or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was a thing. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what's this? And I went for it, and I learned to write. I'd learned from Richard Rodney Bennett on this film musicals. I'd learned to write quickly. I wrote a lot of music that year. So I think my fluency and my connection with notation was sort of solidified. I transcribed a lot of rhythmic music, and I think that was my weakness, was understanding rhythmic placements and things. I was doing a lot of funk charts and 16th note stuff, and that was really good at getting that together. And I always sang, so I ended up almost running while I was a student at the Guildhall Jazz Singers. So I ended up writing all year vocal charts and also horn section things that so I had and then I wrote several big band charts. I kind of wrote things chronologically. I wrote a kind of Sammy Nestico style chart, then a kind of Thad Jones chart, and then I tried to go for a kind of Bob Brookmeyer sound or something. I was just
to immerse yourself in the different styles of writing.
Yeah, but also because I'd done classical music that way, I thought that was the way you should do jazz. Nobody told me, but I thought, well, obviously I shouldn't try and write a bebop chart until I can write a basic swing chart.
Yeah.
And it's funny how, those things are quite old-fashioned kind of approaches to education. People sort of dive in the deep end now and then look back if they have time.
You've taught a lot of very influential musicians in this, and everyone speaks very highly of you. How has all this stuff informed your teaching?
So one of the things I realised that I'm able to do is remember what it was like not to know.
Right.
Like a lot of people, they forget the light bulb moment, and they forget being puzzled by things that they now know about. And so I quite enjoy remembering that. The teaching thing, I did some Saturday morning harmony theory teaching to a singers class at the Parkshot Centre at Richmond. That one, which is still going, I think.
I think Trudy used to teach there too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she did. And this was with Lee Gibson. Yeah, so Lee Gibson. Yeah. So then, on the strength of that, one of those singers, or two of them, I think Donna Canale and maybe Daniela Kleins, got into the Guildhall. And then that seemed to be, as I taught them there, I was then asked to teach at the Guildhall.
That's how we got
second study kind of things, second study piano.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, we need an ear training and harmony class. And I went to a staff meeting and said, well, I'll do it. And they went, really? Thinking it was the last thing anybody wanted to do. And for me, I thought that would be great. Talk about harmony. And there was an arranging class with Scott and Simon Purcell and Lionel Grigson, I think, taught the improvisation class, and I just provided information. It wasn't assessed. It was a really great time for me to learn about teaching. I basically thought, trying to organise things that led on one to another. The idea of curriculum, meaning you just don't go and do a one-off class and then say, what should we do next week?
Yeah.
Everything had to have a point to it.
But the thing about jazz is it's such a broad subject. You can't really put it into a kind of order, can you?
Well, no, but the thing is, I read up a lot about teaching, and it was interesting, like Bill Evans never wanted to teach. And this was quite a significant realisation. And when they asked him why, I forget where I've read this, it might be, he said because he couldn't figure out how to teach improvisation without teaching style, and he didn't want to teach style.
Okay.
So he had almost like a moral problem with imposing a style on somebody who was improvising. It wasn't that he didn't think people should be taught, it's just he hadn't figured that out. And I used to look for a lot of things that were common, try and look through complexity to something essential that was going on.
Right, that's a great point, yeah.
You know, and so that could then be taught, and then we could look at where it shows up in lots of different styles. I'd also come from a generation before fake books. You know, I lived in Canada and I was into jazz, but the only thing I did was go to the library and buy the published, you know, songs of Harold Arlen. And I'd have a Harold Arlen week where I'd be playing this Harold Arlen off the sheet music slowly because my sight reading was so bad, and looking at these chord symbols that were written above the song copy and thinking, doesn't look anything like what's going on in the bass.
Yeah, because realizing those piano books are pretty badly done, aren't they?
Yeah, and but also the chord symbols, and sometimes with these little ukulele things.
Yeah.
My dad used to call the banjo portcullis, which is like, you know
that's what they look like.
They look like, you know, with the dots. And I realised that was just to tie up with the right hand shape of the piano accompaniment. So it was no good for if you're reading it, wanted to play the bass, you know.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, how did what I'm looking at here become this I'm hearing on the record? So I'd get a jazz record of Oscar playing, Peterson playing something, and go, how did that become that? So I became interested in how the language, really early on I was asking weird questions like, what is a chord symbol for? Why do you use that? And then I thought, well, from Baroque music, it equates to figured bass. And it's because you trust somebody to provide what's missing. It's a musical shorthand, and it's not notation. That's why it's called a chord symbol. It's a symbol of something rather than the thing itself. And it assumes that somebody will have done a certain amount of work to fill things out, just as in continuo playing in Baroque music. So I got quite interested in that. Also, I had a responsibility. I thought, I'm only about a couple of years older than these people. I tried to stay one step ahead and probably do more preparation than I actually had to. But I also, like, almost philosophically, I wanted to make people interested in, don't try and get chord symbols to do something they're not designed to do. They can't tell you a voicing. It's like a short score of a sound. Now it's up to you, you know. In classical music, they have this thing called comparison of editions, where they look at the first published edition and then the various edits. And I started to do the same thing for a standard. You know, I'd find the original song copy.
Compare versions,
Yeah, and it's interesting. If you take like ukulele chords, they don't do major sevenths, right? And they do minor sixes and six chords, and they do sevenths, and they do like diminished. You know, it's basically like the left hand of an accordion, the buttoned accordion, right?
Yeah.
So you get like. So that became, so then I figured that the bass, I used to sort of imagine a situation where a bass player says, oh God, this is dull, what am I going to do? You know, and then the bass player realizing that, like, was just going to drive them mad. So then they go, you know, find other notes. You know, and then those, we got some, and then suddenly there's a 2-5 goes. No, and then the major 7 sound change. At some point, the 6s became major 7s.
Yep.
And you got like, and then you got a 2-5, and then became a 2-5, and then they wanted, and the turnaround was because they didn't want everything to stop every 8 bars. Yeah. So suddenly, This is like, I remember you. You're the one who made my dreams come true. A few kisses. And it became like... You know, I was interested in how one became the other.
Okay.
What had to be happening.
Yeah.
And what the improviser was driving, how the improviser was driving that change.
So how other chords were inserted between what essentially would be like a 1-4-5
or
something
possibly
like that.
1-5, a few diminished chords and subdominant minor and things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is to look at a set of changes of like a bebop tune and see the old song copy changes in them. So that you could play essential things. You didn't have to be led by the harmony. You could play something simpler if you wanted. And that became kind of part of the way I taught.
Right, okay.
Changes.
Well, I found in my own teaching as well, it's very difficult to be subjective, isn't it, when you're a teacher? You learn a particular way. I learned a particular way how to improvise.
Sure.
And that's my experience. I transcribed this vocabulary, I applied it to this, and I did it like that, you know. So do you find that you are able to be a bit more open? I found sometimes that my teaching could be a little bit, this is how I did it, you know.
Yeah. I try and find a reason for being dogmatic with my students. There's this notion in an ensemble about being able to take care of it business. There's an urge to express ourselves, but sometimes it's not all about you, and sometimes you have to get yourself out of the way to let the music come through, and that means like just doing what is necessary for the material, you know. And I have this kind of stages in my mind that, you know, it's kind of whether you're an instrumentalist or a singer, you know, we want to hear how you feel about the material, but first we want to hear the material so that we can really understand your relationship to it. I try and find a reason, you know, about serving the music, why certain things need to be practiced. And of course, you know, somebody can say, well, I don't really like that sound. And then, and I say, well, that's not really the point. You know, and that's become less and less maybe sustainable, I think, in the current climate because times have changed. There aren't so many gigs where you have to go out and take care of business. You see what I mean? More people are doing their own gigs with original music, or they're doing, you know, contemporary things.
Sure.
You know, I remember a bass player who just went and got a 6 nights a week at the Eve Club in Soho with like Alan Berry on piano, one of those old piano players, and said I just had to learn how to do the thing. And it said it changed his life, you know. And he said, I can hear anything now, you know. It's like, oh yeah, but you know, that's never going to happen again. It doesn't make sense to hold on to that way of teaching. Like, you know, what you're trying to do is prepare a student for the first 5 years out of college to stay in music for 5 years. Because once you've done that, you go, oh, I think I'm all right now.
You've done your job. So I've made some apps.
Yes, you have. Yeah, absolutely you have.
They're all about practicing jazz and practicing standards. Because I, like you, I love standards, and that has been the benchmark for learning jazz.
I actually have them on my phone.
Do you now?
Yes.
Okay.
I came through the Abasol things, and
we both did. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I found the Music -1 from the 50s. Do you know that one? There's some play-alongs from the 50s with Oscar Pettiford and
I've got one of the vinyls right here,
Kenny
actually.
Clark, yeah. So I've used all those as a vocal improviser. Sometimes you have play-alongs. I'm not saying Abasol, but you can hear that they've actually they're interacting with an instrument that then you never hear.
Well, you can do, of course, in mine.
Oh, of course you can, But the thing is, what happens when you play, but I mean really interact, you know, like those kind of like crashing around things, and you're in the middle of this maelstrom of kind of activity, and you realise that they're not playing with you, they're playing with this something killing New York saxophone player who nobody's ever going to hear again, you know.
Yeah.
So I used to go back to these 50s ones where, you know, pianists like Nat Pierce and Don Abney, I think Mundell Lowe, the guitarist, was on those things. Listening to them also to practice comping, I was thinking, comping is like, you know, I have this idea of gear changes in comping, and I was really interested in that you could hear them just kind of, something would happen, it would go up a gear. Normally you hear it from the drums. You know, we all know they go from brushes and then they go to sticks, and then they have several cymbals, and there's a high overdrive where they're on a certain ride cymbal, you know. Yeah. And then you think, well, as a piano player, how am I going to match that energy, you know? Mm-hmm. And so when I teach piano, a lot of what they come to me for is comping, because as you know, I've done a lot of work with singers where most of your Most of the reason you're booked is because of how you accompany. Those early play-alongs, I could hear that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear that in your apps as well. This kind of this beautiful kind of like, you know, just beautifully placed time playing, but with the right voicing. I always say that the changes, especially those American songbook things and the kind of 2-5-1 cadence things, changes are very disruptive to swing. They're very, you know, all our playing, like whether you're a bass player or a pianist, is trying to pretend that the chords aren't really there, you know.
Yeah.
You just float through them, and they're effortless, you know, voice leading. So it sounds like it's more linear.
A lot of those early Abersolds as well were a bit hit and miss, weren't they? Some of them sped up, and some of them got really a bit too excited.
Sure, yeah. And I found that. So yeah, to my point was that the earlier ones, that Music -1, that I think it was like very elegant playing. I really loved it. You know, it reinforced my feeling of what I was just about able to do. I couldn't crash around like McCoy. You know.
Yeah. So, a method for singers to improvise.
Yeah, and the thing is, the model has got to be the people who improvised before there was any theoretical. You're looking at people like pre-bebop.
All right. So Louis Armstrong and people.
Yeah, Lester Young.
Yeah.
Those people, those big band improvisers, you know, who clearly playing by ear, got a very linear approach, but they catch all the changes. But they probably are playing what they would sing. What can you study that puts you in that zone, you know, if you're a singer?
Right. So how do you start then?
It's very much linked to the way that I teach harmony. You break things down into key centres that are like C. There are 3 primary major triads, 1, 4 and 5. And there are 3 primary minor triads, 6, 2 and 3. Yeah. And those are all relative minors to the majors. So C and A minor, F and D minor, G and E minor. And each of those has its own 2-5. We've now got 6 harmonic events that will probably happen in C without going anywhere. So that's 6 events. And then you realise that C sometimes goes to chord 4. That's another little event. I'm doing this very quickly just to give you an idea. But that means that as a singer, I have to be able to hear these cadential shifts. If I'm in C, I go, ba-da-da-da-da, I want to stay here all day. Yes, I do, because it's very comfortable. Ba-da-da-da-da. But as soon as I want to go to A minor, I have to be able to go, and I think the harmonic minor is the most singer-friendly.
There's a couple of notes you're changing.
One.
It's like only one note.
To get, so you need to know, if I sharpen the 5th, I can get myself to my relative minor.
That's right, yeah.
But I need to be able to do that without hearing the chord.
Yeah.
So for singers, you have to be able to beep, C major, Bobby Babu, bit A
That's that
minor.
note that you're changing.
Yeah. So this becomes that.
Yeah.
So it's the 5th, and it gives you a leading note. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at if I want to go to A minor, people find the 5th of the key you're going to and descend.
Okay.
And that's where you get suddenly it stops sounding like a scale and sounds like a melodic event. So if I want to get to the relative minor, I have to find the 3rd of my major key, which becomes the 5th of my minor key, and descend.
Yeah.
So I can go.
And then you've got a reference point to springboard, I suppose.
That's right. And those things you can practice as singers away from the piano.
Yeah.
I mean, those are basic things to start with. You can understand the approach. I've got 8 things I want to do. I want to be able to cadence in my 3 major keys and my 3 minor keys. I want to go from chord 1 to chord 4. There are notes you learn to flatten or raise of your key. So I just have to flatten my 7th and my 6th, which means I don't have to leave my sense of C. You know, C is always there, which is what singers want. They want to feel that stability. They don't want to launch themselves to a new key and think, where the hell am I? But with singers, you have to be very gentle because the voice is the most vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
You know, like you, I love the American songbook. You know, I have to be careful, you know, when some people, you know, they sing to unleash something, you know. And you know, and I think there's
singing is such a personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You're exposing your soul, aren't you, when you sing?
But it's still the idea of when do you do that? I try and go for the whole shape of the thing. Look, you've got a song. If you're going to sing 2 choruses up front, maybe paraphrase. Since we're talking about paraphrasing, maybe the paraphrase is going to happen in the 2nd chorus. So you know, I have this thing. It's like you want to tell them what is, then you want to tell them what you feel about what is. Then maybe you'll tell them how you feel about the other people on stage and how you all feel about what is. Then you have time to tell the audience how you feel about them. Benjamin Britten used to talk about the holy triangle between the soloist, the ensemble, and the audience, and the energy flow that went, different ways. And sometimes one corner of the triangle was unaware of the other. It's like so interesting when you think of the dynamic. In a listening ensemble, that happens without having to talk about it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a huge amount of ensemble experience when you're a student, you have to articulate those things so people know what to listen for. The first thing is to be able to deliver the material on which you're going to paraphrase in a way that sits well within the ensemble, however you do it. Before you change the melody, there's quite a lot of riffing around standards, Choose wisely when you do that kind of thing. There's a time where it's exactly the right thing to do, And for me, the first thing for singers is that sometimes the note is more of an effort than it is for them. Okay. Like the bass is a physical thing. You work at getting sound, and and the paradox of the fact that although you can't play a long note, you're trying to make it as long as you can sometimes.
Yeah.
But given with the limitations of plucking the string,
Well, this is one thing I noticed with beginner players is the decay. Don't have the note length correct.
That's right. But I think that's a good model for singers. Back to your app, that's a fantastic resource, really, because you can imagine this would be like a good swinging rhythm section. Drop your voice in anywhere and see if you can begin.
So let's do that. I asked you to pick a standard that you'd like to, and maybe you can demonstrate some of these paraphrasing ideas.
Well,
So which tune have you picked for us?
How Deep is the Ocean?
How Deep is the Ocean? Okay.
It's Irving Berlin originally.
Okay. So I'm going to play two choruses. All right. Are you going to play piano or are you going to sing?
I might do both at the same time.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I think there are a couple of things to demonstrate. One is why I like this sequence. It explores those key centres that I was talking about.
We're in the key of C minor.
C minor, which is E flat. So I know I've got my E flat, A flat, and B flat. And I've got C minor, F minor, and G minor. Right? And I've got 4 and 4 minor, these are things that happen around E flat. So just to give some context of this first thing I'm thinking of doing, I've got this C minor, and then it goes to G minor, which is one of the satellite keys of my planet.
Satellite, eh?
Yeah, so it's like E flat is my planet, and it's got like C minor.
That's home base,
yeah,
right?
And then C minor is rotating around it in the air, F minor and G minor. So I know that in my voice I'm going to have Bobby babu babu boo boo down. Bobby babu 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 down. I have to be able to hear those.
So you're using the fifth as your jumping off point.
That's my fifth of the harmonic minor of each. So C harmonic minor.
Great thing about the harmonic minor is it instantly sounds like bebop, doesn't it? Because of that major third in it.
Yeah, the business end of the harmonic minor is this augmented second, there's minor third, which has all those things. And so then I've got to explore. As a singer, I want to explore G minor, and then it goes back to. Then it goes back to home, but before it lands there, it goes to chord 4. Now I'm at 4 minor. Then it's got this weird little half step. This is the other thing that happens. I'm in the key of E flat. I'm heading for that 2-5, but it gives me the one upper semitone from there. But I've got to get back to, it's got these little games it plays where, you're almost going to home and then it thwarts you and you go to another key. So say I've done masses of preparation.
I mean, you have the advantage because you're playing them on the piano as well.
So why don't we do it without me playing?
Without you playing?
Yeah,
okay.
But maybe give me the piano.
Okay, here we go.
Babu way, babu 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 be do do da. Babu be da do de bula. Badaliaru rabu be do la 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 la. Papa ba pise babu do papa we do 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 do. Say da de da do do do. Babu way papa de da do 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 de do. Bip. Ba bip ba boo da boo da boo da do da do I think that particular tune covers everything. The only thing it might not cover, there's this thing I really like, which is the secondary, the dominant on 2.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people go, how much the ocean? If there was that.
There, it's there, right.
Yeah, that means, the way you get to that is you sharpen the 5th of your key. You just go up.
Okay.
So you can train singers to get there from the tonic triad.
No, is the sharp 11th, isn't it?
Yeah, so the sharp 5 of you. But what you have to do is you have to hit, for singers, instead of explaining that in terms of the chord, like sharp 11 of the chord, you say it's the sharp 5 of your key.
The tonic is always their reference point.
That's what you need inside your ear as a singer.
Course,
you can't just go, oh, I'm on F7 now.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking earlier about John Hendricks. If you listen to his scat solos, he can throw his voice to any of those satellite keys at any time. When he improvises, you know they're all ringing in his ears, those special notes. And if you find that, you know, then he'll go, you'll go, you know, like from that note, you open another. So you can, but
like unlocking little doors, isn't it, to different places?
Yeah, but you've got to find the significance of those trigger notes,
key notes,
like to get the leading note of all the minor keys you're trying to get to, and the flattened 7th gets you to the subdominant, and then the subdominant minor. It's the note for the subdominant minor is the same note as for the secondary dominant.
It's getting very technical now, isn't it? We're getting very deep.
Excuse me while I just go down this deep rabbit hole. The main thing is it's a thing that happens all the time, and the sound, there's a sense in the sound, and you don't have to name it. Anything, you just have to say, can you hear that? Can you hear what's happening now? I do that trigger notes. You're able to shape a solo better because you hear the whole form. You don't go, oh, where am I? I've just been attending to this cadence and I've forgotten where I am, you know? You have to see this much bigger picture. And I think, I don't know, if I ever retire, maybe I'll write the methodology book, you know, one more methodology book.
I think you should, Pete, to be honest. I think you
So, I mean, the interesting thing about paraphrasing things, the other thing, which is a very natural way, I think, for singers to improvise, and you hear it in a lot of instrumentalists, and this is not a harmonic thing. It's very closely linked to the laws of rhetoric in speech making or preaching, which is the idea of repetition and emphasis and repetition and extending yourself to make a point. You know, so in speech making, you know that there's some, I think they call it the power of 3, where you say something and you say it again and you expound on it, and that's pretty much how Coltrane plays.
But that carries on into songwriting as well, doesn't it?
Of course it does, and also into like soloing. You know, so if I wanted to do that on the same tune, I probably wouldn't put so much harmonic detail in, because I'd be thinking more about the gestures. You know, so if I was going. You know what I mean? There's that's a story, more like a narrative way.
So we're getting into call and response a little bit as well.
With yourself, and just, you can do things like sing a long phrase, but make sure you finish it well, because you want to start the next phrase with the end of the old one. Yeah. So that's a really good trick. If I go like... Otherwise, all your phrases just kind of die at the end. Just because those narrative skills, like linking things, is something that a lot of people, they think there's so much to work on cadences, that they forget that the reason people listen to your solo is probably that.
Because there's a narrative and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Shall I finish off with a few questions?
Oh, go on then.
Yeah?
Matron.
Some of these will be easy to answer, some of them will not be easy to answer.
Thanks, Geoff.
So
we've known each other a long time, haven't we?
We have.
We've been friendly up to this point.
What's your favourite album?
It's not a vocal album. I'm really into, at the minute, large-scale writing for large-scale forces that integrate improvisers. So I would have to say the one that I would take to a desert island would be Epiphany by Vince Mendoza. And the soloists are Joe Lovano, Michael Brecker, Kenny Wheeler, John Taylor, Mark Johnson, John Abercrombie and Pete Erskine, and a London Symphony Orchestra. So there's a lot to unpack in it, but it keeps me listening all the time. So at the moment, that's kind of where I am.
Amazing. Is there a musician, live or dead, that you'd like to have played with?
Yeah, I'd like to just comp with Dave Green.
Have you not played with Dave Green
I
before?
have.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm saying comp because I just want to listen to him and his lines and his time feel and everything. It's like there's so much history in there, and it's still current. And it's like, I say that because I've heard him a lot recently, because Nikki, my wife, plays with him in the quartet with Karen Sharp, and I'm just and I used to do gigs with him, and I'm thinking, oh, Dave. That's really
legend.
Lovely. Yeah, amazing.
Absolute legend.
Yeah.
Has there been a highlight of your career so far?
Probably the project I did with John Hendricks, where I spent time with him, helping him finish his lyricisation of the Gil Evans Miles Davis album Miles Ahead. Happened also by accident, but because he was the son of a preacher. And
son of a preacher man.
He was, yeah. He was the seventh son of a preacher man. And I met him in London and spent time talking to him, and that led to a long, productive relationship. But it seemed that all roads had led to that point, because his references were all the King James translation of the New and Old Testament. And I know that very well because my father was a Church of England church organist. And so I totally got him, and he knew that I got him. And as well as the American songbook and jazz and improvising, there was this other thing there. So for me, that was like, it's like everything I'd been interested in my life seemed to lead to that point. You know, it was very serendipitous. So I'd have to say that.
Yeah, it's amazing. What was the last concert you attended?
I think I went to see Nicky with the Karen Sharp Quartet a little while ago, but also Nicky's big band, Nicky Isles' big band, with all that new music, fantastic new music. And the thrill of going to that gig is that I've heard all that music begin in the house with little rumblings on the piano, and then I go to a concert and hear it in glorious Technicolor. Yeah. And of course I've heard her music with different times with different European big bands, in Stockholm and in Helsinki, and it's always like different, but familiar. It's lovely.
Amazing. What would you say was your musical weakness?
Sight reading.
All right.
Yeah. I hate doing it, and I'm not very good at it.
Right.
What I'm quite good at is making my bad sight reading sound like a creative decision. Mark Murphy, when I used to do gigs with Mark, I spent 15 years with Mark Murphy. He used to suddenly throw a lead sheet in front of me of like an Alan Broadbent tune that he'd written lyrics to and say, this is a great tune. Pete and I are going to do a duo. Pete's going to play it first. And then I'd kind of creep through it, sight reading it really slowly, but making it sound like I was just being extremely tasteful.
Yeah, okay.
So I've got a lot of strategies to cope with my appalling sight reading.
So you're talking about a lead sheet probably with a melody and chords.
Yeah,
right?
lead sheet with melody and chords, and I can make sense of all those, and that's how I'm used to playing those things. But if he counted me off like, Pete, go on your own, it would just come out like terrible, But because I did a sort of rubato thing, and then he sang,
you can get away with it.
Yeah. So I have strategies to cope with. That's my weakness.
Yeah. Do you ever get nervous on stage?
If I'm conducting, I was the conductor of Kenny Wheeler's big band, and just the sheer array of personalities and musicianship that I was. If there's ever a job that was totally redundant, it was that job. They'd do it without you equally well. Yeah. But they liked you to confirm what they suspect, just so. But I knew the tempo things.
You got to get the right tempo to start with.
I used to do a West End show, and Five Guys Named Mo I did for a year, in the West End, and the dancers needed the tempos exact. So I have this kind of, the responsibility of the right tempos. So that gets me a bit nervous.
What's your favourite sandwich?
Cheese, Parma ham, tomato and mayonnaise with some spinach.
Oh, okay. Almost like what we just had.
Yeah, you could have read my mind, Geoff.
What about a favourite movie?
Oh, there's a movie I loved, which probably just get it on VHS, with Tom Conti, and it's called Reuben.
Okay.
And he's a sort of alcoholic, faded Scottish poet who's used to be very successful. He plays that part very well, slightly drunk and very funny, and he's in America, so he's like that classic, sort of funny but sad. Mm. I really loved that movie. It really affected me, and I've always tried to find it again, but I've never.
I'm sure it's available with one click.
Somewhere it is, yeah. And I'm sure it would bore everybody else as well. I really like that movie.
Is there a favourite venue you like to perform in?
I'd like to perform in a piano bar, like a proper piano bar. When I'd studied with Richard Rodney Bennett, and here's a guy who had so many film scores to his name, as well as symphonies and concert programs and operas, he said all he really wanted to do was sit in his piano bar in New York and play tunes. Now I would pretty much love to do that. Those bars are very hard to find. I'd like a good piano, well tuned, and an audience who are into songs. And
just sit and play some standards.
I'd play some standards all night.
I'm with you right there.
And I want people to be sitting around the grand piano on high stools and request things, because that's where I started. I had a piano bar gig in Ottawa, and I did 6 nights a week, and people would request songs. There was a microphone that kind of went around the room, so they'd start singing them quite well, and I'd have to find the key and just accompany them.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, that's the kind of gig that would be a nice.
I'm sure you can find one in Bedford, can't you? Just a piano bar.
Yeah, the pianos. It's got to be a piano. No, I'm not. At this time of my life, I'm not going to play it dodgy. No. I need like a song bar. Yeah. They exist in some cities, but I'm not sure if there's one in London.
So, what about favourite city, favourite country? Have you travel a lot, so.
Paris.
Ah, okay.
Nikki and I have a flat in Paris.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, we bought a studio flat in Le Marais about 15-20 years ago. In those days you could kind of do it, and so we have it. We're starting to stay there again recently, and to go to a city and have your own place, even if it's like a tiny room, and then you just kind of explore the city. You have a different perspective of the city, don't you? Yeah, and I speak French sort of reasonably, which is also really helpful, because some people complain about Paris and people are unwilling to kind of put up with their dodgy French or something. But I find the Parisians very lovely. So finally, what's your favourite chord? Okay. That's a silly question. No, it's not. It's not a silly question. No. Now people probably hear it everywhere, in everything I do. It's when it's tuned spirals. It's like fifths in the left hand, and then your thumbs are a semitone apart, and then you have fifths in the right hand. So it's a minor 11 chord. All right. Okay. Right. It's very nice. Mm-hmm. And when I first learnt it, I played it all the time, but nothing like it on any other chord. I go, my days are sad and lonely. Oh yeah. For you I sigh for, you dear only. That was the only I knew how to do it on minor chords. And then I thought, well, this is stupid. I've got to stop doing this. Like people who play the diminished scale, every time they see a diminished chord. Yeah. But nothing like it with the chord before it or after it. Yeah. So I just
So that's a little bit like shoehorning licks into your playing.
Yeah, it's like a harmonic lick, you know. What do I like about it? I like the fact that it's small and large intervals, because most of us do harmony that's based on kind of intervals that are the same, or like quartal things, or tertial things, you know.
Yeah.
So this is like So the reason I like it is it's got a semitone, and it's got seconds and fifths, so small and large intervals. So then I thought, well, what if I took that and changed one note? So I changed this note. So instead of C minor, I went. And I thought, now that's a nice chord. And that's basically C half diminished, but it could be E flat minor, could be A flat 13, could be D7, all those things. And for me, I don't have a chord, I don't think of chords from the root. I think of chords from the middle, because the root's your department, Geoff.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to play them so that give you maximum freedom. So I would say probably that.
That's
which
very
is
lovely.
like, and then if you move one more note, you get a diminished chord, and you can, all those things. So it's just like extrapolation from this very nice Kenny Barron chord. By changing one note, I've now got a whole kind of world of really interesting chords, like half diminished chords, altered dominants, Lydian dominants, minor major sevenths, bit of diminished, so it's, and that's a minor 6, a semitone, and fifths. And then you try and put different roots underneath it, So that's
beautiful.
It's not really a chord, it's a chord voicing, but it's not, I can't define it from the
I love
root.
the way it leads to other things.
Yeah, you can
it's
tweak,
flexible.
and it's the tweaking thing. So, and I always think that sometimes in education, people stop at the point where it could become really interesting to go, it's a nice chord, lad. Look, play that. Every time you see him on you get lots of mileage out of that, and you go, but what if you just took it a bit further, and then it just goes whoosh like that.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why we're attracted to jazz, though, isn't it? Because our mindset always wants more. I mean, I've been the same. I've always wanted to change things.
Yeah,
and
this is not the
challenge
end. There's
ourselves.
no end point to it.
No.
There's got to be. It's got to lead to something else,
Yeah.
And I think so. Maybe that's my little. That's the thing I'm toying with at the minute. And also those things, it's for string writing. Those things sound. Those things are hard to voice in a big band because the tuning. To put saxes like that, it's like woo. It could go really well or really badly.
Is that good in a choir as well? That voice.
So it's beautiful in the choir, but it's strings.
Well, I think that will do it. Thank you very much for coming.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
So much to think about there.
So little time.
Yeah, and so little time. No, let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thanks for asking me.
Thanks,
Great.
Pete.
Thanks, Geoff.
See you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for making it to the end of another podcast. Please subscribe if you want to hear more of them as they land. The Quartet Jazz Standards podcast is a UK music apps production. Quartet for iOS, taking your jazz play along to another level. Search for Quartet on the App Store or find out more at quartetapp.com.